This project was supposed to be very challenging. Not only did you have to use both Illustrator and Photoshop, but you had to design, and you had to come up with ideas, and you had to create a series of frames that work together. That's basically what motion design is. And if you were able to complete that assignment, you are in the game. Let's look at some example projects and talk about what works and what could be improved. I hope you enjoyed this project because I love seeing all the work that comes in with it. Even with every student having the same script and the same storyboards to be basing their designs off of, there's a lot of variety that comes in, so it's a lot of fun for me to see it. Let's go over just a handful of these that have done a really good job and talk about them. Let me bring up all these frames on the first one right here. So this designer chose to use an elephant as their animal. I love the way that that looks. This frame right here especially, it really looks like that elephant is being hoisted up off the ground. Very nice little dashed lines. I love how they're kind of tapered there. Very nice touch. The text is really nice and lined up on this frame. I would like to see that same kind of treatment over here. I know the 30 would be really big, but maybe changing the two weights of the fonts like I did in mine would help with that. And making those numbers really big, I don't think would be a huge problem. I really like the transition shape that is created by this grappling hook and the way that the grappling hook is hidden behind that frame. Those two hooks on the back side are actually pulling this to the side. I love that. And the next frame, I think I can just click through like this. Yes. The next frame is very interesting. It uses this dark gray background and a very stylized set of flames, which I love. I would just like to see something that says this is on fire. Obviously, the sound design, once you get to the animation, you're going to hear fire crackling. That's going to sell it a lot more. But right now, it looks like these elements are just sitting on top of the 2D elements in the background. So maybe layer a few of those things together, add in some oranges, some yellows, some reds to really sell that is supposed to be flames in the background. Great job with the leaves in the fist there. That looks very convincing. Our final lockup, and I love that nice wavy, swoopy rope that goes through the text. Well done. Now, I do want to point out one little critical error that this designer made, and I don't want to pick on this designer, but I want to use it as an opportunity to teach you something. These frames were not designed at the correct resolution. These aren't 16 by 9. If we look, they are 1920 by 1233, and that's across every single one of these design boards. So it was probably just a simple mistake that when setting up the original document, the designer chose the wrong preset or accidentally typed in the wrong numbers, but this would obviously have to be something that needs to be corrected so that it is 1920 by 1080 and the correct aspect ratio. So it's going to take a little bit of extra work, but that's very, very important to pay attention to right from the start. All right, let's move on to the next set of boards and take a look at these. I love that this designer chose the bear as their subject. Again, this is a great representation of the bear looking like it's just getting swooped off into the sky. Very cool. The rope looks super hefty. I like that. It looks like a rope that could support a bear. This text right here did bother me a little bit because this is not the same font as what you see in the next frame and in the design boards that I made. This is Briller and this is something different, and I don't really like that. It should be consistent with the design throughout. There's really no reason to add in another font here. Another thing that could use a little bit of help is just lining up these edges with the size. This 8 is going off to the left side of the pounds at the LBS right here, and I think that could be tightened up just to make a nice solid block of text. But otherwise, this designer has done a really, really nice job of making it look like the bear's up on the roof. I love this shot. Maybe just scale the house down a little bit more so we have some more room around the edges. But this is a great transition. It looks like we have a little bit of an alignment issue right there with the solid in the background and the edge of the grappling hook, but I love the way that that's looking. That's a really great transition there. The flames here are really nice. I think the designer chose to make the ladders red in the background too, so everything's getting a little mushy and blended together there. It's kind of hard to see. So again, I'd like to see some more layering of these flames and maybe change up the colors so that there's some oranges and yellows. And the grain is especially heavy on this frame, maybe across the board. So maybe tame that down just a little bit. But I really like the collection of ladders here. It looks like just a big pile of ladders somebody threw together and set on fire. Very, very nice. Again, great job putting those leaves in the fist. That could probably scale down again, give a little bit of breathing room around the frame. It doesn't need to be quite so big. And then the final logo lockup, I'd really like to see white. It's black here. It really blends in with the grappling hook on this frame. And just for consistency with my set of boards, make that white. Otherwise, this is really great job. So very well done there. Let's move on to the third example. We've got another elephant, and again, this designer has just done an excellent job of making this rope nice and swoopy, really wavy. Love the way that that looks. This elephant definitely looks like it's being hoisted up. Very nice block of text there. That 800 and the S and the 0, those are lining up very nicely. Absolutely looks like that elephant is climbing up on this roof. I love how this designer's taken the elephant and really integrated it into the stock photos convincingly. It might be a little bit too tinted green for my taste. It just looks a little bit unnatural. Maybe dial that back just a little bit. But I love the way that you incorporated the trunk on that rope, pulling himself up on the roof. This frame actually feels a little off-center to me, both on the vertical axis and the horizontal axis. It might be dead center on the horizontal axis, but because the elephant is there, it feels a little off balance maybe. So I'd like to see that house just shifted over to the left a little bit and down. But I really like how this designer clipped off everything underneath these bushes. It looks very nice there. And this designer even took out the reflections in the windows, which is nice, but it looks like it's just seeing straight through to the background, which I guess that absolutely could be a design choice this designer made. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think I'd rather see something dark so that it looks like there actually is something in the house and it's not just a paper cutout from a magazine or something like that that has nothing behind it. I'd like to see some more depth there. But still, very nice job laying out all those objects together. And oh, this is a great transition frame too. The hooks are actually going through the frame and popping back in. There's some shading going on here to sell that depth a little bit. I don't know that this hook right here would necessarily make sense going back through. It could, but I think you might want to just look at how that is interacting with the frame. Maybe it comes from behind and pokes out just like this one does. So maybe these three hooks hit it. I don't know. It's a little bit tricky, I know, but maybe this one just isn't poking through. Just these two are, since they're in the back. But I think that's a really, really interesting transition. The flames being hand painted with brushes in Photoshop is great. Maybe just add in some more ladders, just to exaggerate this frame a little bit more. There's only this one, but I love the way that the flames are looking. That I can already see how that would be animated in my mind. Very, very cool. Great frame here. And then we've got our final lockup with that rope shooting across. Now, this frame I do want to talk about because you can see how the way that this rope was distorted is pretty jagged. There's actually a way that you can use the puppet tool to make that much more smooth, which on the first frame, if I remember right, this is very, very nice and smooth. So let's actually open up this PSD and take a look at what we could do. All right, so on this first frame, it's very nice and smooth curves. So let's see how this designer actually pulled this off. There's a grappling hook smart object. There we go. Inside this group, we have a couple of different copies for the rope. So that way this designer made it much longer. But then let's look at the puppet warp effect. So basically the way that this designer achieved such nice smooth curves for this frame is by adding a whole lot of pins. And that's sometimes what you need to do. But there's actually a setting we can use inside of the puppet tool to make these curves much more smooth rather than rigid. So let me go into this smart object actually and see what we've got in here. Got this nice length of rope, and inside that is even another smart object. There we go. This is our source rope. I'm not going to be saving anything, so it's okay for me to make some adjustments here. But I'm just going to give my canvas size a little bit bigger using the crop tool. And then I'm going to add a puppet warp. I guess I'll make it a smart object just so I can change things if I need to. But I'm going to come up to Edit, Puppet Warp, and then I'm just going to add a few pins. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's say. All right, now if I grab this one and move it up, grab this one and move it down, you can see this little jagged shape that I'm creating. Now I don't particularly like that, and one way to get around this is just add a lot more pins, right, and make this as round as possible. But instead of that, I have this setting right here under Mode when I'm using the puppet tool, if I change it to distort, boom, everything is nice and smooth. No effort put forth at all to get this to be nice and curvy. There's also rigid. If I were to change it, you see that it snaps it to much straighter lines. It's a very, very handy little setting to be aware of when you're using the Puppet Warp tool. So just like that, you're able to make really nice swooping lines and adjust this however you need to, and it's going to behave much more smoothly than if you left it at normal or at rigid. So there's a little tip for that. And if we take a look at the last frame, that would be very easy to adjust on this if we just went into that grappling hook, find the rope, there we go, and change the Puppet Warp so that it is set to distort. And it looks a little weird right now, but if I click the check mark, it's because we have a mask. If I disable that, there we go. Now it's much smoother. And obviously this was made to look a certain way with that setting set to normal, so it might be worth just redoing the puppet pins to get this to look exactly how you want, but it does already look smoother. Otherwise, this is just a really nice set of boards. I'm very happy with the way that that turned out. Let's look at our last example here. And I love this little highlight on that grappling hook. It's a very nice detail. It ties in with the spot that I made with the katana and the shine on that. So very nice call out to the overall design there. This text might be just a little bit too big, and if we take a look, this T is coming out much further than that 0. So I'd like to see the 30 scale up a little bit and then maybe scale everything down just a little bit so it's not taking up quite so much room. 800 pounds looks great. I love the way that the eye bulges on this hippo. The little question marks that's making it look like this hippo has no idea what's going on. I love that little humor that's added into the design. And just an excellent job making this hippo look like it's actually on the roof there. The shadow underneath it really sells it, and it looks like it's stepping there on that roof at an angle. Very nice comp work there. Transition is great. This little detail of the yellow kind of bleeding into the green is very interesting. It looks like we have a little bit of alignment issue again with this transition in the grappling hook. Probably just a mask issue, but very easy fix there. I love the stylized flames on this frame. Very cool. I think this is a very playful way to handle flames, and the group of ladders just sitting there is great. So excellent job on that frame. Again, really nice job grabbing those leaves, and then we've got our final lockup with these leaves kind of floating, and then I love how this grappling hook really looks like it's just blasting through the text, blowing all these leaves all over the place. Very good job of communicating the motion with this single frame. It looks like a few of these leaves could use a little bit of help on the mask. Some of the background is still visible through some of these holes, but that's an easy fix. Overall, these boards have done a really excellent job. So that's everything I want to cover on the grappling hook project. Go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back, because I know this was a very tall order where you had to actually think about design when really this is just a class teaching you Photoshop and Illustrator. But I wanted to give you this taste of what it's going to be like if you move on from here and start to design things for yourself and see how this whole process works. And another thing I want to show you right now is actually my spot fully animated, so that you can see where this process goes after this course and after this part of the production is finished, and you can see what the end result actually will be. So here is my 15-second spot for Ninja Gear on the katana product.
A katana blade is so sharp that it can slice a bullet in half mid-flight. So yeah, we're pretty sure it can handle potatoes. Toss the chef's knife and cut your veggies in style. Ninja Gear, because why should ninjas have all the fun?
So there you have it. That is what the final result of everything that I had in my head while designing these boards would bring you to. So it's a lot of fun to be able to animate something like this. I had a blast doing it. I'm going to put up a time lapse right here so you can kind of see my entire process, not in any kind of detail, but just for fun so you can see what it looks like. This took me probably roughly around 12 hours to complete from start to finish. But because I had everything designed beforehand and I had that nice storyboard to go off of, and even some of the sound effects, it made it much easier for me to just sit down and get the work done. I hardly had to modify any of the assets. Some of the masks maybe just had a little bit of cleanup work, but overall, it was all set up and ready to go for me, and I could just focus on animating. So let's just look at it one more time and see again what that looks like.
A katana blade is so sharp that it can slice a bullet in half mid-flight. So yeah, we're pretty sure it can handle potatoes. Toss the chef's knife and cut your veggies in style. Ninja gear, because why should ninjas have all the fun?
There you go. So obviously you can see that a lot of effort is put into something that is only 15 seconds long. It's very fast paced. There are a lot of elements that needed to be worked on and prepped for animation, and then it took a while to actually animate it, even though it goes by in 15 seconds. But I do want to show you one technique I used on this potato being sliced. Right in here, you see how there's this kind of blended part of the blade that's coming off as it's moving really fast? That's a technique sometimes referred to as a smear. But it kind of just implies this really fast motion of moving objects. So instead of using motion blur, I use this technique to make it look like that blade's moving really fast. That's something that wasn't in the design boards, but as I was making it, realized that it would probably served the animation if I made some of these fast moving objects smear like that to communicate that motion. Another thing I want to point out is that on this carrot slicing, I had to make every single one of those individual slices so that I could separate them and move them around while I was animating. So I had to use that single piece of the carrot that you could see that I prepped in Photoshop and apply it to all these other individual sections of the whole carrot. And I just cut them up incrementally inside of After Effects, actually, because I can use the pen tool to do masking in After Effects in the exact same way that you do in Photoshop. So instead of prepping all those assets in Photoshop, since I had the tools I needed to do what I needed to do in After Effects, I just made it right there. But otherwise, almost everything was ready to go from what I had made in Photoshop, and that was all I needed. So hopefully you enjoyed that little glimpse into what would happen after this part of the process for you, handing these boards over to a motion designer or you taking them yourself and animating them. That's all I have for this last episode of the Dojo. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. And just like that, we have reached the end of the class. It's been an honor and a privilege to teach you, and I really hope that you're starting to feel comfortable and maybe even confident creating artwork in Photoshop and Illustrator. There are so many doors that are now open to you because of these skills, and I hope that you're excited to continue your journey. Thanks for being a part of this session, and I'll see you in the alumni group.